is our third coffee chat. We've been doing these with our members and elected women leaders around the state to just try to take advantage of a virtual world and give us all an opportunity to have a little virtual face-to-face, even if just for 30 minutes, to get to see you and learn about you and have our members ask a few questions. We have been really lucky to have a sponsor for our little coffee chats, Sarah Mercer with Brownstein and Hyatt. She's going to wish us a good morning. Are you on, Sarah?
Hi, Chantel. Yep, I'm here. And thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for Brownstein's support. You've always, Brownstein and you as a board member and a committee member have always been such a huge supporter of the Women's Chamber, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I would love to just, one thing it's really a pleasure for us to be able to sponsor this. I mentioned this, at our last coffee talk that, we've got a state government relations practice group. We're here in Colorado. We're also in New Mexico, Wyoming, Nevada, and California. I like to say we're the political powerhouse of the West. And one of the things that I love the most about these coffee talks, and is something that I just feel sort of through and through, and why I love state and local government, is that it's so accessible. I think there's so often people feel, especially when we're thinking and having discussions about what's happening at the federal level, that government's so far away from them. And I think these coffee talks are so great because it's really, this group is really showing our members, the Women's Chamber members, that, the government is just us. And that is certainly not more, it's the most true at that local level. And we've had the pleasure to work with Representative Michaelson-Jenet on many, many issues over the years. So it's really just our pleasure to be a sponsor of this. And thanks for putting these on. They're so, so terrific.
Well said, Sarah. Thank you. That is a perfect introduction into our discussion today. Representative Michaelson-Jenet is just absolutely one of my favorite energy sources up at the Capitol. She just brings so much passion and commitment, not just to women's issues, but mental health. And we're going to talk a little bit about her mental health bills this year that she has in session. She represents House District 30, which includes Northern Aurora and parts of Adams County, right? And all the way out to DIA, I think, right? So it's a big district, and
all the way east to Bennett, Keensburg, and Strasburg.
Oh yeah, right. You've got a lot of turf to cover. What's so interesting is when I read your profile, as long as I've known you, I didn't realize the story about you, that you traveled to all 50 states and you wrote about your experiences. It takes a little crazy to make a difference. I didn't know this story about you. And for that, you, in Conversation magazine, were labeled top 25 women changing the world, which I think is a great title for you, because I do see you changing the world in so many ways. Really appreciate you being here this morning and taking some time to talk with our members. Why don't you kick us off by telling something about you and about your favorite mug? I brought my Women on a Mission mug today. It seems appropriate.
Well, I like that. I actually have a really cool Women Vote mug that is an old mug that I don't know whether or not it fits into Amendment 44, but one of the sergeants gave me. Oh. And it's super cool. But this one says good friends, good coffee, good life, and is definitely my favorite, beyond for the saying, but I love the shape, and it's kind of like half soup bowl, half coffee cup, and that's how I like my coffee. A little bit about me. Yes, the traveling to all 50 states was a highlight of my life when I was 36, and when I was done, I was like, oh, okay, now what? And I learned, I'm now 48, I learned that there was a lot of now what left. And I was inspired by the people that I met in all 50 states. I interviewed 500 people. Like a plethora of races and religions and socioeconomic levels, from homeless to multi-billionaire and everywhere in between, who are ordinary people just solving problems in their community. And I really believe that problems are solved at the community level. And working at the state government is absolutely 100,000% working at the community level. And I couldn't be more thrilled that I get to do it.
Excellent. Well, you can see it in the bills that you sponsor. So I know we've worked together on your mental health coverage bill, but you have another one that touches on youth and bringing access to mental health for youth. And this also touches close to home with 2 teenagers. And I know it's really been a struggle with COVID this year, especially, so the timing couldn't be better. But why don't you tell us about both of these bills, and feel free if there's others too that you want to share about your priorities and what's sort of driving you to push these bills forward.
Awesome. Well, I counted yesterday, I have 22 bills in the system right now, which we're supposed to have 5. And so I love that I get to somehow skirt around that 5 limit, because 5 is just not enough. And the one that Chantal was talking about first, I just passed out of committee last night on an 11-1 vote. And the one no is because he absolutely didn't understand the bill. And he stated his why for his no on the mic. And I was like, dude, we've been talking about that for an hour. Anyway, we'll get him on the floor. So what are we trying to do? My biggest goal in going into the legislature has been to turn around the youth suicide epidemic. And when you look at suicide in the state, the youth are our 3rd highest. It's those senior citizens, middle-aged men, and then youth. But for youth, suicide from 10 to 18 is the #1 cause of death in Colorado. #1 cause of death. Our kids are dying because they're killing themselves. Do they have diseases? Yes. Do we have great children's hospitals and UC Health and all that? Yes. But why are they dying? They're dying because they're killing themselves. And my son attempted suicide when he was 9 years old. And I remember as a mom at 9 years old, I dabble in some poetry, and I wrote a poem about how I was feeling and how insufficient I was as a mother because my son could not be happy. I was told he suffered from dysthymia, which is a low level of depression that is there always. And they hardly ever give that diagnosis to a kid. But my son has dysthymia. And so here he wants to die. Here I'm told he really is never going to feel what I feel as happy. And so I have completely failed as a mother, right? Can we head nods? Do we always just go, obviously I fucked up my kid? It's a little early. I don't have a filter yet. That's a lie. I never have a filter.
No filter needed.
So, I was trying to figure out the problem. And with my son in particular, he very much fell through the cracks in school. I was volunteering at 2 juvenile detention facilities around the time that my son attempted suicide. And what I learned is that, my son, who's a child of privilege, I was not an elected official, but I had already completed Leadership Denver. I knew all the people, right? I knew how to knock down the doors. I have an MBA. I was high up in Denver Health. Like I had my network of people to come together and help me figure out how to get my son an appropriate IEP. I even interviewed the entire special ed department from Jefferson County Public Schools because I was not their crazy mom. I was Denver Public Schools crazy mom. So I needed to know exactly the questions and demands that I needed to make of the SPED department. And I had a list and I had a script and I had everything in my hands. And I still was unable to get an appropriate IEP for my child. Volunteering in the juvenile correctional facility showed me very clearly how many kids are just missed. I don't know if you've ever volunteered with Junior Achievement. That's how I was volunteering in correctional facilities. And I think Junior Achievement is awesome. And if you decide to volunteer, ask for the tough kids. The second graders are adorable, but the kids who are incarcerated need your help. And I looked at those kids. We were doing a popcorn study. So they had to come up with a flavor, they had to come up with a marketing plan, they had to come up with an opening launch. And it was amazing to watch their creative minds go. And of course, it's kids in jail. So like there was marijuana flavored popcorn and probably some drug names I didn't recognize. But like they were coming up with all of these ideas and these amazing plans. And I looked at these boys and I said, you are just like my son. And I didn't say it out loud, like there was that kind of like recognition in my head. And the next day, when I realized I had a problem was when I said to a friend, just casually, yeah, I'm looking at colleges for my daughter and prisons for my son. And I realized when the words came out of my mouth that that wasn't funny, first of all, and that I had a really big problem. And I started on a path to try to fix it. My whole journey thing around the country was because I live by a value that says I will not complain about a problem unless I'm willing to work on the solution. It is my driving mission. And I had just completed Leadership Denver, and it was 2008, and the market was collapsing, and Katrina had happened, and the whole world was a mess, and who was going to be president? Like it was really, if you remember that time, it was a lot of uncertainty. And I saw what looked like people giving up their power, saying, I just can't wait for somebody to get into that White House to start solving some problems around here, which, by the way, when I say it now, it sounds freaking hilarious. But anyway, I wanted to show them that in order to solve problems in your community, it does not matter how smart you are, or how much education you have, how much money you have, that it's ordinary people who are solving the problems. So fast forward, because that's a very long talk in itself. My mission at the legislature is really to turn around the youth suicide epidemic, youth mental health, and our overall mental health crisis. And every year I have a bill that I call my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goal. And so my BHAG last year did not make it through. So it is still on the calendar for this year, and it is going to make it through this year in some iteration. And we can talk about that second. That's Chantal mentioned that first. My second BHAG is what I got out of committee yesterday. So when I got into session this year, we had like a fall start in January, and then we started again in February. And between January and February, I was trying to figure out, what do we need to do to help our kids reintegrate into society before we put them back into schools? Because it's not only me who's banging the drum about youth mental health crisis. If you had read the New York Times, the Denver Post, even the smallest newspaper or magazine, every single one of them at some point touched upon the fact that our kids are in crisis because we have done to them something we never in a million years thought would happen to us. I always make the joke about my favorite show is Downton Abbey. And actually I have some more favorite shows now, but anyway, it was my totally favorite show. And they have an episode about the 1918 Spanish flu. And I remember arrogantly watching that episode and saying, thank God I live now. That's never going to happen in my life. And so I'm sorry I caused the pandemic because I said those. So here we are, and the pandemic comes along, and all of a sudden, 99% of us, there's some small percent of people who were still alive who had experienced the Spanish flu, but 99% of us did not experience anything like the Spanish flu or a massive global pandemic on that scale. And being told, you got to go into your house, you got to lock the doors, you got to sanitize all the surfaces, make sure you're washing your groceries, don't hug anybody, don't kiss anybody, don't talk too closely to your friends. Everything's going to be online, and you're not going to see your social network in person, and school is canceled, and by the way, you have to learn this awful video conferencing tool called Zoom, and the stress and anxiety that put on adults alone was magnified on our youth, who were like, oh my God, what is happening? Is the world coming to an end? Teenagers by their very nature catastrophize. So how many of them actually thought, all of the old people in my family are going to die because of this pandemic? My dad lost his job. My mother wasn't working. We don't have any food to put on the table. Uncle is sick. Does he have the COVID? All of these questions have been just percolating, and the fear that they're feeling, because by the way, they're way down on the vaccine scale. Yes, we started to do 16, 17, 18, et cetera, thank God. But if you're under 16, you're kind of like, I'm just hanging out here. And I know I keep hearing about kids who have long haul COVID. And when am I going to get long haul COVID? It's overwhelming amount of stress. In 2019, I had the honor to be the chair of the School Safety Interim Committee. And I spent an entire year, truly, but mostly through the interim, which is actually longer than the session, studying school safety. And I came to an agreement. It was a fully balanced committee, same amount of Democrats as Republicans. So we all kind of called our third rails. And the third rail in this conversation is always guns. So we took guns off the table, right? We took guns off the table and said, okay, if we take guns off the table, what is the cause of the suicidality, right? We know kind of what causes a successful suicide. A gun is almost always a successful suicide, but what brings us to this suicidality? And the main thing that we saw that was a commonality between all sorts of different types of shooters is that they suffered from some sort of stress, anxiety, PTSD, trauma. So it was the thing that brought everyone together. And all I was thinking in January is, so now we're gonna say, come September, the world is normal again, and we're gonna put all these kids who are bubbling over with stress, anxiety, trauma into a school building. That is not a safe equation. So how do we all of a sudden help all of Colorado's teens? Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. So I came up with the idea that we should develop a screening tool online that is open for any school age kid, and then would include a warm handoff. So if you screen and your screening told you needed to have additional mental health support, that we would do a warm handoff to a provider in your network if you have insurance, in Medicaid if you have Medicaid, or to whomever if you have no coverage at all. Well, the state actually, like, this was surprising to me, one-upped me and said, how about not only the screening, but we provide 3 free, or paid for by the state, so free to the student, 3 free mental health therapeutic sessions to try to help kids build coping skills and strengths and know who to talk to and have a trusted adult in their life. You know, the Healthy Kids Colorado survey always reports that 1 in 5 Colorado students say they don't have a trusted adult in their life. But we could actually change that by simply saying, okay, let's work together to figure out who that trusted adult in your life is and name that person and create a plan. So there are all sorts of questions about this program, and I could answer them for hours, but ultimately I'm going to wrap it quickly by saying what we are providing is kind of a risk-free trial. Any kid in Colorado, any school-age kid, it does not matter where you go to school, it does not matter if you're homeschooled, public school, private school, we don't care. The fact that you're a school-age child in Colorado, this the tool will be available for you on your screen. The primary delivery system of the health sessions will be telehealth, but in-person is available when possible. We'll be pulling on the entire network of providers, community, private, hospital, anybody who's willing to take on some hours to be able to serve as many kids as possible. And quite frankly, what our estimate is that we'll actually be able to provide services to 25,000 kids, and that services means the therapy sessions. But everybody has access to try the tool. And when we balance out how many kids are going to need the actual therapy sessions, some are going to need directions to coping skills and things they can find online, and some are going to need to go to the crisis hotline. So the 25,000 will end up with the 3 mental health sessions, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we're able to spread it throughout the state and have a really good rate of return of the kids participating in the program. And then I'm going back to beg for more money. So that is my big bill, and it passed committee yesterday and is on its way to appropriations. And since it's stimulus funding, I shouldn't get held up there for long. So fingers crossed, we'll see this signed.
Dafna, I have to say thank you for being so open and vulnerable. And this is a place where we do a lot of that. And I think it's one of the powers of this network with the Women's Chamber is that we can lay it on the table and speak from the heart. And a lot of what we do is driven by our own experiences. So I can't thank you enough for sharing all of that. It's really, it's connecting. My phone in the chat and is blowing up with people saying how much they love you. So really appreciate all of that. So I want to ask then, is there something we can do as the Women's Chamber? We just had our policy meeting yesterday, and we're going to make a recommendation to our board to support your bill. So that will be one thing that we can do, but what can our members do? Can we, call in, write letters? Like how can the Women's Chamber support the work you're doing, which is so incredibly important?
First of all, a lot of ways. Number one, if you want to help get it to the finish line, start looking at when the Senate hearing date is and participate via remote or in person to talk about why this is important for the kids in your life. But more importantly than that, because I think we're going to pass this bill. Like I am feeling confident we're going to pass this bill. Right. I shouldn't say that out loud. We need all the help. Right, exactly. The only way this succeeds is by word of mouth. We're going to need you to be reaching out into your communities and saying, this is available for your kids or my kids. And there's all sorts of ways to go about this. First of all, the older the kid, the more privacy they're going to want. The younger the kid, the more support they're going to need from you in terms of filling out an online form. And of course, they know how to do that. But, we ask the question, who is your insurance provider, so that we can make a connection with somebody who's in your insurance program, so you could have long-term care if needed within your insurance program. So that necessitates a question to the parents, what's our insurance? And, so I can put that information into the form. But we are going to need places where kids who don't have access to a computer or don't have access to private space to have a teletherapy session. So we're going to ask places like libraries and churches and community centers and government buildings to open up secure rooms that kids could be able to go into and have their private session. We're going to ask that they be, insulated so that nobody's eavesdropping on their therapy sessions, and someplace where parents can hang out nearby if they want to, or be in the room with the kid if they want to. So we're going to need the whole community to get behind this, and that's by design. And why is it by design? Remember the thing that I said about the Colorado Healthy Kids survey. 1 in 5 say they don't have a trusted adult in their life. I want to show the kids of Colorado that the adults of Colorado are standing up en masse and saying, we're going to help you get connected to the help you need. This is not about us. This is entirely about you. And I want them to see adults standing up for them. I think that component alone can change the way our kids' outlook is, because every generation, of course, goes through this, but with the toxic stress our kids are dealing with, they don't trust us. They don't trust us. Like the world fell apart on them. How can they trust us? But we can regain that trust by showing them that we're standing up in support of them. So once it passes, or even while it's going through the process, if you could write in your neighborhood newsletters, if you could share it in your other groups, if you could put the word out there that this is something moving through the legislature for our children. And the faster I spend that $9 million, the faster I get to go back to the well. So, bring me those kids and let them have their experience. And let's just tell them, we get that this was a traumatic freaking experience, and we want to make sure you have the help you need so you're ready for school. And it's not from just Dafna, it's from all of you too.
That connection to the community is, that's brilliant. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's such a powerful way to send that message. So Heather put in the chat the bill number, House Bill 21-1258. Dafna, what's the best way for the members to reach out to you if they have more questions? Maybe you can put in the chat. I'm also happy to circulate, oh, right, you've got your Gmail in the chat.
That's my cell phone.
Oh, and your cell phone, perfect. Because I bet you all are getting inundated with emails and texts, but if that's the way.
I gave you my personal email instead of my state email so that I might actually see said email. And as others on this phone, Chantel, Lauren, Sarah, know, the best way to reach me is via text. So if you have a question that has some urgency to it, you really want to hear from me in short order, text me. If you have a little bit of time for me to get back to you, email.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm gonna honor we have a young one, Vivian's daughter's on the phone or on the Zoom. We will honor our 8:30 wrap up. I want to spend the whole day with you and learn more.
Definitely.
So that way, every time we get together. But I really appreciate you connecting with all of us and sharing the important work that you're doing. I'd encourage everybody who's on this morning. We record these, and so we'll have them posted with on the Women's Chamber website. So feel free to share with others Dafna's powerful message about the bill she's sponsoring, and feel free to reach out for her invitation. I'll let you know when the Women's Chamber takes official action on the bill, and then maybe you can give me some ideas about what we can do to help that I can share with the members as well.
That would be amazing.
Thank you so much.
Everyone,
my pleasure, my honor.
Thank you for being on this morning, and thank you so much for all you're doing at the Capitol. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My pleasure and my honor. I'll talk to you all whenever you feel like you want to talk to me.
Great.
Bye.